Welcome to PodCapers, the official podcast of a place to hang your cape. And this week, what happens when scheduling falls through the floor? You get David Molofsky to talk about Comic-Con. Yeah, that usually does it. Yay! Cue the music! Hello there, Capers, and welcome to PodCapers, the official podcast of a place to hang your cape. My name is Scott James Merridew, and this is the show where each week we talk about various geek and nerdy related topics, and are joined by a very special different guest each week. Now, as I said, we had a bit of a scheduling mix-up entirely our fault, and so we had a free spot. So I thought, shall we get someone interesting, new and exciting? Someone to thrill you, Capers? Well, whoever they were, they weren't available. So I got David Molofsky instead!
Hello, Capers!
I'm sorry, kidding. I'm just kidding, David. We love you. We love you dearly.
I know you do. I know, Scott.
Yeah.
Speaking of some people we love, I wanted to give a shout out. We have a new Patreon supporter.
Who is this incredibly smart person?
His name is Dave Green. I just wanted to give him a shout out. Thank you for donating, Dave. You're now listed on our official Patreon page on A Place to Hang Your Cape. You'll also get a special thank you tweet as soon as you send me back your Twitter handle. And we've got some other great content. We've actually got some exclusive Patreon content coming up that I will be posting probably by the time this episode comes out. It'll probably already be out. So if you want to go onto our Patreon at patreon.com/ab2hyc, you can donate and you can hear some bonus audio and get some other exclusive rewards.
You lucky, lucky, lucky sods! Oh, and Dave Green, I love you. I do. You think other people love you? I love you. We do. But anyway, now moving on. So, obviously, it's that time of the year when everyone's going to cons, aren't they, David?
We call it summer here in the UK, but yes.
Well, that's the only way we know that summer has arrived, you know, when all the cons start popping up. Because, I mean, the weather changing, the temperature, no, that stays the same. Horrible.
No, it's obviously when you start seeing more spandex and capes, that's when you know it's summer. How else would you know?
Like the leaves changing in autumn, or the first frost of winter. It's people dressing up as Deadpool and Spider-Man for summer.
Pretty much, yeah. I'd say that's accurate.
Yeah, and of course, some people might be going to cons for the very first time.
Yes, I still remember my first Comic-Con.
Ooh, tell us the story.
So this was back in 2013. I had just, it was when I had just relaunched A Place to Hang Your Cape and taken on some new writers. I think it was right around the time that you and Mark started working for.
Yeah, it was September 2013 was when I joined, and Mark joined not long after that.
Yeah, so this was back in February that year, so maybe you were in the second batch then. Either way. Really not relevant. So I was
first the worst, second the best.
So I was going to London Super Comic Con, which is my first big con. I'd been to like a couple of weird, like smaller ones in my college, but in uni. But really, I don't count those because they didn't really have many comics. So I was.
It's
really
a comic convention.
Yeah, it's not worth getting into anyway. So I went to LSCC. And it was at the Excel that year, and it was still pretty small. I think it was only its second or third year running. So I didn't have a ticket when I walked in, and I basically just like walked in and bought a ticket, which now I know is really unusual for Comic-Cons and kind of skewed my perception. So when I went to MCM later that year, I assumed that I could just, walk in and get a ticket, and I ended up queuing for 2 hours. So thanks for that. But yeah, I remember being like really nervous, asking people to take pictures, and also being really nervous talking to comic creators and stuff. But actually, a lot of the people I met at that convention are some of my closest friends still from the comic book scene. So there you go.
Yeah, and then you went from that. You embarked upon a magical journey to many, 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 many other cons.
Yeah, this year alone, I've been to 5 already.
Oh my god, how do you find the stamina, man?
2 were in one weekend. 4 were in 4 weeks, including that weekend. So, fun times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so Scott, I actually have a question for you about Comic-Cons because we've actually only met at Comic-Cons. Like
Yeah.
the only time I've ever actually seen you in person. So I have a question. Are you like a mystical like ghost, a mystical spirit of some sort who can only materialize at Comic-Cons? Because if that were true, I would believe it based on the evidence I have right now.
Well, either that or you're based in London. Big Comic Cons are held in London, so I went down to London. You know? Because I live in Edinburgh, it's another country away.
I don't know. I think my magical spirit theory is a lot more believable than, oh, it's in London.
Okay,
I mean, come on, Scott.
if I was a magical ghost, I would not be haunting Comic Cons. I would be haunting David S. Goyer.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
Rattling
I'll give
chains
it
in his attic. Making his
Probably write a
milk
movie
turn
about you.
sour.
All right. So what we thought we'd do for this episode, and like Scott said, we kind of did scramble this together at the last minute. So it might be a little looser.
We're
than usual.
professionals!
Absolutely. So like I said, I've gone to a lot of cons. I think since that one in 2013, I've been to maybe 20 or even more than that. This year I went to Leamington Con, MCM London, Heroes and Villains Fan London, Ice Brighton, and LCAF. So that's a lot for
Yeah.
just this year. So I actually was thinking. So we wrote this article a few months ago. I wrote this article rather a few months ago about tips for going to Comic-Con. It was mainly aimed at punters, and for those in America, that means the people who go, as opposed to like the people who have a booth or whatever. You know, how do you explain punters? It's like a customer. I don't know.
Basically, anyone that goes to other place to get any sort of service. Oh, here come the punters. Oh, round up punters, round up 2 for 1, half price fish, 1 pop. And I turned from like a street vendor into like an auctioneer for some reason. I don't know.
Well, at any rate, so we thought we'd go through some advice for people who are going to con, maybe for the first time, or maybe you're changing the way that you're going to con. So I know that, for instance, I've mainly gone only as press, but when you go as press, I mean, a lot of the things for punters is the same, but there are some tricks that you can learn to improve going as a member of the press, and there's also some things that I know, having spoken to people who've been behind the tables, especially those indie creators. So I thought we'd just go through,
The
whatever we can
etiquette.
get through. Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
So-
because this is Britain and there is an etiquette for everything.
Yeah. So,
Shall we begin?
yeah.
Let's start with number 7.
This is going through my article, which you can play along with. We'll include the link in the show notes. So, number 7, my first tip is look, don't touch. And just
Which is
before we get
advice
into
for
this-
life in general as well.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these things are sort of like, if you wouldn't do it in the real world, don't do it at Comic-Con. But this one, so it's basically, it goes both for people and comics, but we'll start with the comics. Basically, whenever you go to a Comic-Con, there's going to be a lot of amazing things there that you're going to want to touch. Don't, unless you ask permission. And that goes for things like comics, statues, buttons, stickers,
People.
badges, costumes, and props. It's basically just like you don't know what the deal is all the time. And I also know that like if you ask someone if you can pick up their if you can look through their comic, they're much more likely to be like yes, absolutely, and they're usually more engaged with you as opposed to if you just pick it up. It sort of feels like rude, or it can come off that way, and it just sort of can like affect the whole conversation that you end up having
Excuse
with that
me while
creator.
I peruse your comic without your permission. Fna, fna, fna.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of weird because in a comic book store you obviously would just pick it up, but it's important to remember that this isn't a comic book store. And
It's a
also things
showcase.
like-
It's an exposition of people's hard work.
Exactly. And you also don't know, like, if something, especially for like figurines and statues, like maybe something's fragile, maybe it's just like it's not for sale and it's just for display.
Maybe people don't
Imran-
want your greasy fingers all over it.
Yeah, exactly. Imran from the Jock and Nerd podcast has a very funny story about breaking a statue at G-Fest last year. So He is a living example of why you should look but don't touch.
Yeah.
That said, if you ask and they say absolutely you can look at it, you can touch it rather, then go ahead and touch it. That's fine.
Yeah. You might still get some weird looks. Can I touch that? What, my hat? Yes, your hat. I mean, okay, but why?
It happens.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, again, a lot of other great rule for life. Just be respectful, I guess.
Yeah. And I guess that kind of brings us up to the next one.
Number 6.
I love it when you do that.
I love it when I do that.
So this is a phrase that you may have heard before, floating around Comic-Cons, but it basically is cosplay is not consent.
Now, I've talked about this with Kit Horsley, aka Putty Geeks, aka our cosplay hero, and it's a very, very important subject of discussion that really people ought to know anyway, but apparently you've got to teach people how to be civilized beings.
Yeah, and while we're talking about Kit actually made a YouTube video full of tips as well. If you want to watch that video, we'll link that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, it's a lot of good stuff there.
That one's aimed mostly at cosplayers, so like how to be a cosplayer at a con. Anyway, so just like with the books, don't touch costumes unless you ask. Again, you don't know how fragile they are. I don't know why I feel like I have to say this, but obviously don't grope the cosplayers. You'd be surprised.
Advice for life: don't grope people. If you do, it may cause a bit of a bother.
Yeah, the other thing is a lot of people feel like when they see the character, someone in a costume as the character, that they're seeing the character, and they tend to like treat them that way. So like you might feel like you want to, run up and hug Spider-Man or Deadpool or whatever.
Who would hug Deadpool? If I saw a man that was like heavily scarred and had a mask and grenades and machine pistols and 2 samurai swords, I would not hug him. Although having said that, I was at a con where there was a guy dressed as Deadpool with a sign that said free hugs, and I did hug him, but even then, he had the sign.
Yes, everyone with the free hug sign, that's them saying that it's okay to hug them. And I do that a lot. Sometimes at cons, you just need a hug.
Because you know why? Because it's free.
Yeah, exactly.
It's free anything. I'll take it. Free plutonium. I'll handle that.
But the thing about cosplayers, again, it's just like, just be respectful. Just remember that the person under the mask may not want to touch other people. Like a lot of the people that go to cons maybe have some sort of social anxiety and things, and just be aware that happens and that they may be cosplayers as well. It's also, just because they're in cosplay doesn't mean you can take a picture of them, and it definitely doesn't mean that you can take any picture of them.
Yeah, photo consent is another thing that's we go around quite rightly, and just like, because I mean, would you be okay if someone took a photo of you just if you're just walking down the street? I wouldn't. I think, are you spying on me? What's going on here? Who sent you? And
I mean, I've had it happen to me. I was at a con, one of the cons that double weekend, and I just wear a cape to cons, for a place to hang your cape. And someone just like, I was just walking and someone just took a picture of me and was like, "Oh, I'm going to post this on my Twitter." And I was like,
ask.
Thanks. But, like you just like, it looks like it's a terrible picture basically, because I was sort of like, what is happening? So, if you're going to take a picture of a cosplayer, just, tap them on the shoulder, say, "Hey, I really like your costume. Do you mind if I take a picture?" Be clear about what you want in the picture. If you want yourself in the picture with the cosplayer, if you want them to do a specific pose, like you can ask. Again, like they're just a person, so if they'll
no, they'll probably say yes. But if they say no, yes, that's entirely their prerogative.
Yeah, and if they're in costume, they're going to be prepared to have this happen to them, so it's fine.
If they're in costume, they probably want people like looking at them and taking photograph and evidence of their hard work. But if they don't, again, they're allowed to do that, and you're not allowed to get huffy about it.
Exactly.
Jeez, it's not that difficult, kids. Just, it's different if you like catch someone accidentally in like the background shot or something. If you're taking a picture of a crowd, yeah. I mean, Fair enough, but
it's just sort of use common sense, basically. It's also like just because someone else is taking a picture of them doesn't mean that you can.
no.
So don't like snipe over someone's shoulder and take a picture. And also, if you do take a picture of someone, ask them if they want you to send it to them somehow. Because a lot of cosplayers have cards or like have websites and they want to, have the picture.
Yeah, so people know who they are and say, oh, this person does great cosplay.
Yeah. My pro tip, which is another one, I sort of would keep this for press, file this in press as well, but I always take pictures of whenever someone hands me a card, a cosplayer especially. I like to take a picture of them with the card. Like I'll hold the card in front of the camera and just be like, look, I'm just taking a really quick picture just so I don't forget that this is you. That way, when I go back through the pictures and, on my phone or whatever, right next to the person's picture, that is like the good picture, is a picture of the card. And I go, oh, right, they had a card. Let me look that up. And then I can tag them on Twitter, Instagram, or whatever.
So we can share the love.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think moving on from that, we're going to go into number 5.
So this one is just to remember that comic creators are people too. And Scott, you forgot this once very early on when you started at Place to Hang Your Cape. That's not a story we tell very often.
I mean, it was a really bad comic, David.
I know.
It was a really,
Anyway.
really bad. Okay, so Capers, you know how I can be very honest about my opinion about certain things that I'm deemed to be of an inferior quality. There was a comic, which we won't mention the name of, that I consider to be very, 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 very below what is the bare minimum required in terms of good writing. So I tore it to shreds. And in fairness, I may have gone a teeny weeny tiny whiny itty bitty overboard.
I believe there was a line about how it made you want to bang your head against the wall.
Well, in fairness, I banged my head against the wall.
For any creators out there, just so you know, Scott is not allowed to review comics anymore.
Yeah,
Except on the show.
Yeah, I'll review anything I fucking want on this fucking show. I've got free reign, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it was not the most professional. It had to be rewritten. It had to be rewritten. It was my very first review, and yeah, they were not happy.
Anyways, the point that I'm trying to make is just to remember that when you're at the booth and speaking to one of the creators, and this is mainly I'm talking about like in the Artist Alley or Comics Village with like the indie creators, or at like a smaller con, just remember that the person behind that booth actually put a lot of work into what's in front of you, and it also like they're a person. So whenever I go up to a creator, the first thing I usually do is just ask them like, hey, how's your day going? Like, what's up? Like, I wouldn't if I was approaching any normal person. Or, if I was really drawn to the comic itself, I'll be like, dude, that cover is really cool. Can you tell me about it? And that's actually my main trick with creators is that everyone likes talking about themselves. So if you ask them to talk about their book, which is clearly something they're very passionate about, they'll tell you about it. And it sort of is like when I do it, obviously I'm doing it in a press situation, which is different. But even when I am going and I am trying to buy the book or interested in whether I might, it means that like when you walk up to the booth and you say, hey, can you tell me about this? It makes it easier for them to go into their sales pitch. And it means that like it makes the conversation a little bit easier, and you can say things like, oh, I mean, that sounds cool. Can I buy it or not? Or you can be like, oh, that sounds really cool, but it's not really what I'm interested in. And it just makes the conversation a little bit easier and more natural.
Mm-hmm. And just beyond that, just, just be nice. And people don't like be up like say, hey, Kirkman, I think Walking Dead sucks. Don't do that.
Yeah. Or don't insult people's art. Like a lot of the art at cons, or some people's art at cons won't be up to the Marvel and DC standard, but that doesn't mean that it's not, good in its own right and stuff. This is something I talked about recently on the Ghost City Comics podcast. That competition's still going on, by the way, guys. If you want to enter that, yeah, basically just like you know, the just be nice to the people behind the booths. I mean, it's just like everywhere, just be nice.
Yeah. Just don't be a dick. That's advice for life. That's pretty. That's. I think I like to think of that as the 11th commandment. Just brought down from on high, inscribed in stone. Don't be a dick.
Thou
Advice.
shalt not be a dick.
Thou shalt not be a dick. Advice for life. Moving on to other advice. Number 4.
So this sort of goes into what I was tailing into earlier, but it's basically it's buy what you like, but don't feel like you have to buy everything. So I always bring cash to a convention, and I always make sure that I bring a specific amount, whatever that might be, to budget it out so that I don't go overboard. It's also like, while a lot of people will take cards at cons, it's sometimes not the most secure place. Not that their specific device won't be secure, but just in general, conventions like that aren't always.
A lot of people, a lot of crowds. You gotta be a tiny bit careful.
Yeah, basically. Oh, definitely don't ever use contactless payment at a con. Always enter your PIN. This is a tip from a friend of mine who is a security expert. He told me at the last convention I was at.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
That's a pro tip for you there. And also, a lot of the smaller people, a lot of the, well, not small people, the smaller creators and stuff, they might not have a card machine. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they're the people that probably need the money the most.
Yeah, the ATMs will also be really crowded. Usually it's the longest line in the place.
Mm-hmm.
So I always bring a specific amount of cash, and I know that that's how much I want to spend. So I usually, if it's a multi-day con, I'll walk around, speak with people, and then it's usually not until the Sunday until that I actually decide what I'm going to buy. And that's really normal, and a lot of people do that, and that's totally fine. Saying things like, I'm going to come, that sounds really awesome, I'm going to come back later. I usually say, that sounds really awesome, I'm not buying anything today, but I'll swing back around on Sunday. And it's also just like, it's
your money.
And yeah, it's basically, it's your money. Don't let anyone force you to buy anything.
Or
and this is something I'll get to.
Or judge you or guilt you or whatever.
This is something I'll get into when I talk more about advice for being behind the table. But there's definitely some creators who give you like that hard sell, really like sort of shove the comic in your face, try to get you to buy it. And while there's nothing wrong with that, it's also, it makes it very hard for people to say no. And if you're uncomfortable, you can just say, look, it looks really cool, I'm just not buying anything right now, I'm just walking around, and that's cool. Like, basically, flip side of it is, if you do like the thing, fucking buy it.
Yeah, because I mean, if you like the thing and you want more of the thing, you gotta buy the thing, because that way the people making the thing will be more incentivized to keep on making the thing. This is like a fundamental law of the universe. First rule of thermodynamics. He said, not knowing anything about thermodynamics. Yeah, and the people on the other side of the booth, they'll have been where you are. They'll know that you'll come back, maybe you won't, and it'll be fine, and they'll understand. And just hedge your bets, take a look, and see what appeals. And if it does appeal, and you can afford to buy it, and there's nothing else really you want, fucking buy it. What's stopping you?
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's like, if you go to cons, you should definitely go to the Artist Alley or the Comics Village, whatever. Talk to some of the people and take a chance on their comics. Even if you don't end up liking it, most of the time it's only going to cost you like £3 just to try it. And that's not that much. And for them, it could be the world. And for you, it's pocket change. So just give it a shot. Like, a lot of gems are out there, and the quality of the comics that I've been seeing is actually getting higher the more people that join the industry. And I think, Scott, you'll agree that a lot of the comics we've seen lately have been really great.
Oh, yeah.
So just go out and actually buy stuff.
Yeah, and because then you might discover something that you'll really, really love purely by accident, or maybe off a recommendation of a friend, or a recommendation.
If you are thinking about going to a con, look up what we've reviewed recently, because 9 times out of 10, we'll have reviewed everything that's coming out specifically at that con beforehand, so that if someone's got a big comic debuting, and you can check it out.
Yeah, we won't steer you wrong. And didn't you
And,
recently get into something, David, that I recommended?
it's not a comic though.
No, but it is
But
something
I
I
did
choose to
start
mention.
watching Carmilla finally.
It only took me like mentioning it nearly every single episode, but I finally
6 months.
hooked David into the wonderful world of Carmilla. And David, what do you think so far?
It's pretty good. I've already watched. So I watched the whole first series, 36 episodes.
He
They're all
live
like 3 minutes.
Facebooked, drunk, direct messaged me.
Basically, yeah, I had a bottle of wine and I watched the first series and I live texted Scott the entire time my reactions, and I think you'll agree they were pretty positive. I really did. I love the show. It's very addictive. I definitely recommend like setting aside an evening and watching one of the first season all at once. I think that it plays better that way. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, it's very much a show that you can binge. It's fairly
Yeah.
short episodes because it's a web series, and
The one thing is, I've started to get really annoyed about the theme song, because it's just like it's over and over and over again. It's just like, it's not that it's annoying in and of itself, but just the repetition of it.
the theme
Every
song
few minutes
is
you're hearing
awesome.
the theme song. It's not. I'm not saying it's a bad theme song.
Oh, just because it's at the end of
Because
every
it's like
single
every few
bit.
minutes you're hearing it.
Okay, well, have you even listened to the whole thing? Like, there's a whole song, and it's a beautiful song. Oh my
I
god.
have not. But yeah. But yeah, if you are like unsure about a comic, so let's say you go to a con. This is actually my genuine advice to people. Go to a con on the Friday and the Saturday, and if anything catches your eye, write it down. And if you aren't sure whether you want to buy it or not, look it up on a place to hang your cape, because chances are we might have a review on it, and that'll probably help you decide whether you actually want to buy it on the Sunday. There you go.
Yeah, there's again, advice for life. So I think we're going to move on now. We're going to talk about number 3.
So this one is I'm reading the article now, and I love the picture on this one.
I love the
'cause
picture of it.
It's one of my favorite pictures of myself in cosplay.
Yeah.
So this one is Make Friends, and the picture, for those of you who don't want to click on the article, but you totally should because it's a great picture. It's me dressed as first season Daredevil, with an amazing Kingpin and Spider-Man cosplayers. And I thought that the picture exemplified it. It's Kingpin giving Spider-Man and Deadpool and Daredevil a hug. Like, what could be better than that?
Best of friends.
Yeah, so like I go to cons and I make friends, and I go alone a lot of the time. Sometimes I'll go with some of the Place to Hang Your Cape team, but I go alone just as often, and I never feel like I'm actually going alone. And it feels like I'm going all day, and maybe every 10 minutes I'll see someone I know. And I do things that I just, I go to meetups, I chat with the comic creators, I'll chat with any random cosplayer I see, and I just try to make friends. And look, I'm a really big extrovert, so I know not everyone's going to do it, but if you're going to con for the first time by yourself, try to find some like Facebook groups for people who might be going for the same thing. Most of them have either Facebook events or Facebook groups related to it. If you're going to cosplay, there's tons of cosplay meetups at every convention. And like for me, it's like I go and it's a big party.
Yeah, that's basically what conventions are. They're a big party for people that are into all the same stuff that you are. And even if they're not into the exact same stuff, you know what? If you have a conversation with someone, you might find something else that you might be into further down the road. You might experience someone that says, oh, I'm not into that thing, but I'm into this other thing. You're like, ooh, what's this other thing? Ooh. And then you have a conversation.
I've also had some really intelligent, nerdy debates with people at Comic-Con where it's like, I don't like this thing that you're cosplaying, but I'm going to talk to you about it, and you can tell me why you like it, and I can tell you why I don't like it, and we can disagree, and that's okay too. And I find that like the nerds there are much more accepting of being disagreed with, although Scott is also not an unusual example. Scott, what do you say when people tell you how much they love DC?
I say you are wrong. You're wrong. But I like them. You're wrong. but you might like. You're wrong. But perhaps if no, you're wrong. DC is wrong. Accept your fate. So yeah, that's gotten me in trouble in the past. Okay.
Yeah.
If I remember, I think the first con we met, I don't know how, but the Princess Bride got brought up. Maybe it was because of your costume looks a bit like one of the costumes.
Yeah. Everyone says keeps mistaking me for the Dread Pirate Roberts.
Yeah, which I don't see, but
just poking holes in the eyes and being like, now I'm the Dread Pirate Roberts.
Yeah, and I mentioned that I fucking hate the Princess Bride because it's a stupid movie. You did not agree.
It's an amazing movie, Scott.
No, it isn't.
Shut your fucking face.
Okay. So I get that it's a grandpa telling his kid a story. Great, fine. But they keep on interrupting the story and cutting back to them just talking. And maybe the kid offers like a pithy quote like, oh, well, this is going to have any kissing, is it? Like, what is the point of that? Continue the story, develop these characters. Oh, what's it developing? Oh, the kid actually likes kissing now. Well, that's a big fucking character revelation if I've ever heard one. Oh, and then, oh my god, so Wesley and fucking Buttercup are in this forbidden forest type thing, and they're having a conversation. They just got away from the bad guys. They had to go into the forest to get away from the bad guys, and then this rat creature attacks Wesley. Oh no!
It's a rodent of unusual size, I'll have you know, an ROUS.
Like I said, a rat creature. And so it knocks his sword out of his hand, and it lands near Buttercup. So I'm like, okay, Buttercup, here's your chance to prove your worth. Pick up the sword and kill the rat creature. Oh no! Okay, pick up the sword and hand it to Wesley so that he can kill the rat creature. Oh no! Oh, okay, pick up the sword and throw it to Wesley. Oh no! Tap it towards him with your foot. Oh no! Encourage him to grab the sword himself. Oh no! Do something! Do something, Buttercup, you stupid blonde bint! Do something! Oh my god, he is dying! Your boyfriend is going to have his face bitten off by scabbers! Do something! And eventually, she does nothing, and he has to kill it himself. Well done, Buttercup, you're useless. And then they leave the Forbidden Forest, and they run straight into the bad guys again. I'm sorry. I thought the whole reason they went into this wood was so that they could get away from the bad guys. They left in a completely random exit, and the bad guys immediately find them, and nothing interesting or worthwhile was discovered while they're in the wood, so that whole scene was fucking pointless!
But clearly, Robin Wright used that scene as motivation to get some combat training, because by the time 30 years later she appeared as Antiope in Wonder Woman, she was a fucking badass.
That is the only conciliation. That's better, yes.
Take a breath. Take a breath.
How does that machine that sucks the life out of you work? How does that machine do that? They never explain it. Why would a prince marry a commoner? How does that happen? Why, oh why am I the only person that thinks that someone saying as you wish is creepy?
As you wish.
It's creepy! That is not a comforting, suave, or charming line. That is creepy. That is like something that Crispin Glover would say in a horror movie. As you wish. No! No, it's weird. And apparently because he's kept on saying, as you wish, she realised, oh, I guess that means he's in love with me. Okay. And now I'm in love with him. Okay, where is the development?
Moving swiftly on.
I'm sorry. I fucking hate that movie. This is stupid. Oh, God. So, moving on to number 2.
So this one is follow the rules, and I really can't stress this one enough. Every convention has different rules that you will need to follow, and if you're not sure if something's against the rules, ask. And especially if you're going as a cosplayer, like, make sure that you know what the rules are regarding like fake weapons and large props, because that's one of the major ones at conventions.
Yeah. Especially in the UK, we have very select rules about what you can. I'm a writer. I've suggested and pitched ideas for short films and stuff that featured like weapons, and it's like, oh, is this in an outdoor open space? Yeah, you can't do that because the police will be called. They will come and they will arrest you.
Yeah, I've seen it actually. It's also like a lot of the rules around celebrity interactions as well. Like, don't be that asshole who tries to like give a celebrity something. Like, there's usually rules around that or whatever. Like, don't ruin it for everyone else, kind of thing.
Yeah. Because
Also, just
they might
remember,
feel they're people. They might feel
yeah,
uncomfortable. They might not want to come back after that.
exactly. Like, even like I've been told, as press, especially like you're not allowed to give any of the celebrities your business card.
Yeah.
It's like that's okay. I won't
Yeah.
unless they ask me. Like, it's fine.
If they
But the other
ask,
thing is
don't
just
say no. I won't give you my business card.
yeah, obviously. The other thing is just like the rules are there for your own safety, basically. Um, Whatever that you may think about the rules, if you think that they're stupid or if they're annoying you, like don't be an asshole. And most of the time, it's there to make sure that you have a good time and that everyone stays safe. I know recently in London, a lot of the cons are introducing like bag checks. Um, just like I always just go and I'm like, here's everything. And like sometimes they're like, can you drink from your water bottle? And I'm like, sure, if you want me to.
I'm not
Like,
really thirsty, but all right.
yeah, I had to do that at Heroes and Villains Con, and I was going in and out of the press entrance a few times, and every time they asked me to drink from my water bottle, and I was like, guys, I need to save some water for the actual day.
Yeah. Yeah. As you say, it's for your own protection. It's for the people that are attending the con, like the creators and the celebrities and things like that. Protection. And it's just like, you're not going to have a bad time if you follow us. There's nothing that you could do at that convention that would be interesting and fun to do, but would also go against the rules. These are not arbitrary things.
All right, so let's move on to the last tip from the article, Scott.
Number 1!
So this is basically just to carry the essentials.
Because
I
you
have
will
a
be
list.
on your feet all goddamn day.
Yeah, so the number one thing is wear sneakers, or wear trainers.
If you plan on going in your stilettos, you've got another thing coming.
Yeah, I know people who cosplay and they will like literally change their shoes for a shoot and then go right back into trainers.
Yeah.
So here's my list, and again, we'll link out to this. But this is basically everything that I bring to a Comic-Con.
Handy dandy survival list.
Yeah, I posted this article about a week before I went to Heroes and Villains, and a friend of mine was coming with me, and it was her very first con ever. So she read the list, and she was like, kind of teasing me about how, wait, actually you do have everything on this list, and I was like, why do you think I wrote it? Like, are you like, why would I write it and not live by it? Like. So, guys, this is actually, if you wanted to get an inventory of what's in David Molofsky's bag at a Comic-Con, here's the list.
Here's our new section entitled, What's in David Molofsky's Bag? Yay!
So, number one, water, and also snacks. And these two kind of go hand in hand. Most of the food and water at Comic-Con is really expensive. Most of the time you're at a convention center of some sort, and it's also that sort of like that theme park they got the monopoly on it, so they can raise the prices as high as they want.
Won't be the best quality food, and it'll be usually in a few places which may be hard to find / will have massive queues.
Or be really far from everything else.
Yeah.
So what I like to do is I bring my own water, and then I bring a lot of like small snacks to keep me going through the day. So I usually try to have like a big breakfast, and then I'll like snack during the day, and then I'll have dinner afterwards.
Bit of protein, bit of carbohydrates, bit of sugar.
Yeah, basically. I usually stop at like Tesco's and I'll pick up like a meal deal or something before I go into a con. That's usually a good one to go for. I also sometimes I'll go for like celebrations or some other just like basically candy.
For me, what I would recommend is when I did Duke of Edinburgh Award. This is what I used to take jelly babies with me.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Great for nerd props because Doctor Who, but also simply because it's basically sugar, so it just keep you going.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, I wouldn't bring anything salty, so don't bring pretzels or things like that.
No.
That'll make you more dehydrated.
I bring I have a Grazebox subscription. Do you know your
I've heard
Grazebox?
of things like
Yeah,
that.
those things are also like it's basically like for Americans it's basically like trail mix kind of stuff, like nuts and dried fruit. So that's a healthier option, which is what I'm trying to go towards now because
Mm.
otherwise I end up eating candy all day at a con and it's not great.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the other thing is like if I do ever have candy on me, I always like offer it to people around me if
Yeah.
it's appropriate. So that's fun. The other thing I always bring like a whole pack of gum to a convention, and if it's a 2 day con, I may go through an entire like 10 or 12 pack of gum. And the reason is I talk a lot at conventions, almost nonstop,
Hmm.
and sometimes going into my bag and getting out my water every few minutes isn't really possible. So I chew gum basically to keep my mouth from getting dry, and also because I get really bad breath if I keep talking without having gum for a long time. Like probably right now, I have bad breath from talking so much on this podcast.
Yeah, we both have water. He's got his A Place to Hang Your Cape water bottle, and I've got my Donkey Kong mug.
If you want own a place to hang your Cape water bottle, I'll include a link to where you can buy it. They are perfect for conventions
Hmm.
because they keep the water cold. These are like these nice metal bottles. I've had this bottle at a convention in May. It was swelteringly hot, and I had to keep it in a plastic bag all day because it was condensating the whole day because it was still cold the whole day. So I highly recommend them, folks. I think they're really cheap as well.
Yeah. And just the
And they're
last thing
branded with
about
the place
just
on your cape.
yeah, but yeah, and just one last thing about food. Just remember that if you have a big breakfast, don't forget you're not there when you're eating something. You're not going to be there to be full again. You're going there just to keep yourself going. Don't
Yeah,
overdo it, because you're
it's
going to be
also
walking around a lot. So
yeah. And I also see a lot of people who have big lunches there. They just crash right after. So that's why I recommend like having like a lot of little snacks instead of stopping having a big lunch.
it's going to be very hot. There's going to be a lot of
Yeah,
people. That's not a good environment. And because there's a lot of people, you're going to need the next thing on the list.
which is hand sanitizer. I definitely recommend bringing this one. A lot of people are going to be shaking your hand, basically, is what it comes down to. When I'm worried about it more, I will do a pound. And I know a lot of people, like, a dap, what do you call it? Fist bump.
Yeah.
Um,
See, that's what I
so,
mean. I don't know because yeah, obviously you need to be healthy and sanitized and hygienic and all that. But at the same time, like, I've never really been particularly worried about that. I think bringing hand sanitizer around is a very American thing, if you don't mind me saying.
fair enough. But I can't tell you the number of times that I've gotten con flu even with the hand sanitizer. And, like,
Uh,
it's a real thing. Like, if one person is sick at con, everyone will get sick because everyone's shaking hands and hugging.
it's a petri dish.
Yeah, and basically, I know a lot of the like this one goes double if you're behind a booth.
Oh yeah.
Bring hand sanitizer or put a sign in that says, or basically just every time someone goes for a handshake, go for the fist bump, because it happens and you
Yeah.
will get sick. And
And no one wants to
everyone
get
is
sick.
really hungover on Sunday, and that's when you're going to get sick.
Yeah.
All right, so the next few items are pretty self-explanatory. I bring a pen. I bring safety pins, mostly because I wear a cape, and every cosplayer pretty much will always need a safety pin. I've made friends because I heard someone go, "Oh, I ripped my costume." I'm like, "Do you want a safety pin for like 10 minutes, to get you through the next 10 minutes?" And they'll take that. I obviously I bring a camera, often in addition to my phone. I have a little GoPro that I bring, and if I go as a place on your cape, usually I have a dedicated photographer as well. Um, if you're going to just as a punter, like take pictures on your phone. It's a lot of fun. Um, I also take a spare phone battery because my phone is shit, so I always have one. Another
I,
easy way to make friends as well.
Yeah, and also because you might be there with a couple of other people, and you might go off to do different things, and then you want to be able to find yourselves again afterwards and meet up. So if you can't phone each other, you're not going to be able to do that.
Oh, by the way, a lot of the time the service at cons is really bad, especially data service. And even if there's free Wi-Fi, it'll be shit. If you ever split up with someone, make a time and place that you'll meet back up because chances are you actually won't even be able to catch them on the phone.
Yeah, either that or abide by the buddy system.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
So my last essential thing is probably the most obvious, which is bring something to carry your stuff in.
Yeah.
This is for cosplayers especially. Like, if you're ever gonna go for a version of a character, the Rob Liefeld version is always best because they have the most pouches.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um,
Pouches everywhere. Pouches where you didn't think there could be pouches. Pouches where you don't want there to be pouches.
and just think about it as a cosplayer. Like, obviously, you want to go for accuracy, but you're also going to need, as a cosplayer especially, you're probably going to need almost all these things as well. So you're just going to need to work it out. I had in the article, there's a picture of a Harley Quinn who built space into her hammer
Oh, that
to keep stuff in.
yeah, much like the actual Harley Quinn would have done.
Yeah, and I know people who will just, like I do. I just bring a bag. Usually, just a normal bag.
Yeah.
Like,
You don't need to bring a heavy duty rucksack, but you don't need like a clutch purse either. That won't do anything.
yeah, I usually bring like a cloth tote bag kind of thing.
Yeah, something that's easy to carry that won't like dig into your shoulders or anything like that, or they'll just be uncomfortable, and just something that is practical but also comfortable.
Exactly. So there's a couple other things that I didn't mention in the article. One of them is always make sure that you leave space in your bag to hold comics. A lot of people forget about that. Like, I sometimes even forget about it. I usually bring an extra plastic bag just for my comics, just in case. And I swear it has saved my life so many times. The last con I went to on the Sunday, I bought all my comics and I got outside and it was pouring with rain and I had to meet someone, so I couldn't wait for it to stop. And the fact that I had an extra plastic bag to put my comics in and keep them protected, like, totally saved me. It was
Otherwise,
like,
you would basically have mushy pulp.
yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So Scott, do you have as a punter, any other tips for people going to Comic-Con?
Just bask in the awesomeness that is the con. You're there to have fun. You're there to meet interesting people. You're there to see interesting things and buy interesting stuff, and just to celebrate the coniness of it all. It was a very transformative experience for me the first time I get it. And also, thing is, if you're not big on crowds, just if it's all a bit too much for you, just walk away from it for a bit. Find a place where it's a bit less crowded and just take a moment. Just take a moment, because there is plenty of time for you to see everything. In fact, more often than not, you'll see everything rather quickly, and then you'll have like hours just to fill the day. So just, and that's another thing, just take your time,
Yeah, and it's also try new things in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's going to be a lot to see. But yeah, going back to what you were saying, like, if it does kind of get overwhelming, and frankly, it overwhelms me sometimes. Sometimes I just need like 5 minutes to just be...
Just get away from the noise and the people and the heat. The heat is the worst.
Like, almost every convention will allow you to walk outside and then come back in, and it can be... It's fine.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to what I was saying before, also, like, definitely try new things at con. And doesn't just mean comics. Like, I'll do really random things at cons. Like, there was a Harry Potter virtual reality experience thing, and I was like, this looks like shit, and I tried it, and it was pretty cool.
Did you have a magical wizarding time?
It was like you were wearing like an Oculus Rift and holding like a wand, and you were sort of just like swinging. Yeah, it was pretty cool. But like, there's tons of stuff at cons, and like, especially like something like MCM or San Diego or New York. Like, there's gonna be so much shit there. Just like, don't worry about doing everything, but also like, don't be afraid to try something new.
Yeah, and I mean, every single con you go to, chances are there'll be at least one or two things that are new. I mean, you've been to a lot of cons, is that right?
Every con there's something new. And like, every con there's at least a new comic, if nothing else. But like, there's always something different, always something to bring you back every year.
Oh, yeah, and don't forget that. Just don't forget that, as we said, these cons are full of people that organize these cons because they love pop culture. They love these things, and we're all there for the same reason. So enjoy that.
Yeah.
Right, so that advice, as I say, was mainly for the punters, but there are other people at cons, aren't there, David?
Yeah, so there's also, obviously, there's press like us, and there's also the people behind the table. And so I have a little bit of advice for the people who are going as that. What I would say, if you are doing that, the number one thing is the same tips apply. So a lot of the same tips about like what to bring, what to wear, what I was saying about the colors and stuff. It's all the same. So I'm not going to go over those things again.
Even more so, in fact,
Um,
because you're representing someone. You're representing people that you maybe work for,
yeah,
or yourself as a journalist. So, be even more respectful, if anything.
yeah. So my number one advice for going as press is plan ahead. I always have a plan when I walk into a con. It's always I'm going to do 2 hours in the comics village, then I'm going to take a break and wander, then I'm going to do another 2 hours in the comics village, then I'm going to go check out the press conference later on, and then I'm going to, whatever, go
Block
take
out your
pictures of
day.
cause. Yeah, exactly. And it's also like, if you know that you're going to do a specific thing, so like we've gone to conventions and we've known that we wanted to film a video that day, prioritize what you're doing. So, if your aim is to get a lot of like vox pops on this and like man on the street interviews, do that first, because you'd be surprised how fast the day goes by you at a con.
Yeah, because everyone's already there. So once you've gone through them all, you'll do that pretty quickly, or at least all the people you want to. No one turns up to a con like halfway through the day.
Actually, people do, but anyway.
Okay.
Um,
Well, ignore me then!
the other thing is like dealing with. So that's like on the con floor, and on the con floor, it's basically exactly the same as everything else I just said. The other thing I would say as press is, um, basically it's sort of like no, like follow the rules again, but it's also sort of like no, like, so what I do is I always try to find one of the organizers at every convention and just have a quick chat with them if possible, whether it's in an email or whatever. But it's like I try to get as much information as I can beforehand. And there's a couple people that at different cons that I've been to a few times that I know, so I know how to like get answers to my questions. So it's sort of, I guess my tip here is like speak to someone who knows what's up, because a lot of times as press you're going to end up spending a lot of your time like wondering where the celebrity panels are, or I had once spent 20 minutes just trying to find out where to get my press pass from. So yeah, it's sort of just like find someone who knows what's up, get all your questions out at the beginning of the day, and go from there. And then the other thing is just my big one, and goes for being behind the table as well. Bring business cards.
Uh-huh.
I pass out hundreds at every con I go to.
Because there are hundreds of people there.
Yeah, and it's a great way to like both advertise your site, but it's also a great way for people to like remember you. I especially do when I take pictures of cosplayers, because I want them to be able to find their pictures. And I've had so many people be like, "Oh my god, I was so busy that day. I didn't even get a single picture of myself. But I saw your card and I remembered you took a picture, and so now I actually found one picture of me from that day." So it's things like that that can really make a difference. I'd also say like, don't don't be a dick because you're press, and don't assume that you're going to get better treatment because you're press.
Because you're not. You're not better. You're not going to get better treatment. You just have a badge and
Yeah,
talk to more people.
if anything, you're less important than the punters because they paid, and quite frankly, when you have a press pass, you don't.
Yeah.
But it's basically like if someone tells you that you can't do something because whether it's because you're press or just generally that you can't, and like in this, my best example is like if a celebrity says that they're not going to do an interview with you, accept that and just move on.
Yeah.
Like, don't
Find a
badger
celebrity that
people.
wants to do an interview.
Yeah, or just move on to something else. And it's just like, don't. It's basically like, remember that you're representing a company, whatever capacity it is, and like the better like you behave, the better it reflects on the company, and the better it goes for like everyone. And it means that like you're more likely basically to get a press pass the next time you apply.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's about it for press. You've gone as press like once or twice. Well, you've gone with the Placing Your Cape team.
Yeah. Handing out, me and Mark Russell, we've been handing out cards for a place to hang your cape and all sorts. And that was a lot of fun. I'll admit I did most of that. I tried to get him to do it a couple of times. He's like, "No, would you like a place to hang your cape card?" And they're like, "Yes, thank you." And he's like, "Okay, thanks, bye." He's only going to get confident with me when I talk about Disney.
I will say it does actually, if you're going as press, if you go as a team, it helps a lot because, for instance, me and Will's taking a picture. I will stand off to the side, and then as soon as he's done taking the picture, the person will walk off. So I am closer to the person to hand them the business card. So it's things like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to give away too many of my secrets, I think, but
the competition could be listening.
So don't listen. Anyway, so let's go on. So I think I have a few things to say for people behind the table. So
you might be a comic book artist, you might be a writer, you might be someone just selling merchandise, whoever you are.
Yeah, exactly. This is mainly aimed at like comic creators of one form or another. Bearing in mind, I've never actually made a comic, and I've never sold a comic at Comic-Con, but I have sold our calendar at Comic-Con, although it was only for like an hour or so that I was behind the table. First off, if it's your first time going and like selling at a convention, it's hard, and it's harder than you think, because you're going to have most of the day is going to be people being like looking at your comic and then going, that's cool, and walking away.
Yeah.
And you just sort of have to grow a thick skin and accept it.
People might not be interested. That's okay.
Yeah. I would say definitely practice your pitch beforehand. Get it down to 30 seconds, whatever it is for your comic. Don't pitch it as it's X meets Y, because I hate that. I fucking hate it. It's not Jaws meets Alien. It's whatever your comic actually is. Like, just pitch the story, and then if afterwards
you're not pitching to film executives, you're pitching directly to the consumer.
And while it is an easy shorthand, it can also make you make it sound like that's just what you did, and that almost like sells your ideas short.
Yeah.
Like if you came up let's go back to Sarah Millman was on the show recently.
Yeah, Sarah Millman, NPCT. There, I got it.
Yes.
Fucking tongue twister.
We're in the final hours of her Kickstarter campaign right now, Capers, and she's almost at 400%. So if you look at her other comic, though, Heart of Time, you could easily pitch that as, so it's a time travel story, and you could sort of pitch it as like steampunk meets Doctor Who kind of thing. And like, that just sounds like she just took like Doctor Who and put it in a steampunk setting. And it's like, that actually sells the idea of it really short.
Yeah. Think about what Doctor Who is. What is that about? It's madcap, it's adventures through time and space stuff. And then take that, add it to steampunk.
Or even, what if you tried to pitch Rick and Morty as Doctor Who meets Back to the Future? Like that, that's how it was pitched to me at first, and I was like, that sounds like shit.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's really clever show, and just like Sarah's comic, like Heart of Time is actually a really clever, fun time travel comic, and the only thing it really has in common with Doctor Who is time travel. So if you pitch it as it's about, what her actual pitch is, which is something along the lines of like, it's about a girl who has a time traveling scooter who travels through time with her pug. That's actually pretty cool, and that's much more interesting.
Yeah.
My other tip is smile and stand up. If you have a commission on the day and you're an artist and you're drawing that commission, that's cool. Every other situation, you should totally be standing. It makes it easier to make eye contact with people. It makes you more engaged. If you're just sitting there on your phone, no one will come over to your table.
Also, if they do come over, then they're standing, you're sitting, you might get a bit intimidated for whatever reason.
I've had people where like, I've walked over to their table, looked at their comics, stood in front of them, and then just walked away because they didn't even look at me. And it's like, that's not how you're going to sell anything.
Yeah.
Or it's not even how you're going to like interact with people. Like that's going to be your entire interaction all day.
If you're going to be there, be there.
Exactly. Be present. And my final thing is, don't do the hard sell. Find a balance between giving your sales pitch and like it's a hard
Sell
thing to
the
do.
steak.
Like,
Sell the sizzle, not the steak.
well, it's not even that. It's like, so there's some creators who I know who will basically do everything they can to get the comic in the punter's hands, because they know that as soon as it's in their hands, it becomes harder for them to say no. Like, getting it into their hands is actually like, this is a real thing, that if you get someone to hold the comic, they are more likely to buy it, but that they'll do everything that they can to put it in your hands, and then once they do, they basically won't take it back, and they really pressure you to buy it. And in fairness, most of the people I know who do this, their comics are good enough that no one's going to complain about it, but it's still like, I've had people be like, I just went over to that table and I bought this comic and I have no idea why.
What did he do to me?
Like, sometimes it's like you just like walked over, spun around 3 times, and suddenly you had paid for a comic. Like, basically it's like, don't be an asshole, because just because you need to make, like, obviously you need to make money, but forcing people, like, there are people who in the comic industry who have a bad reputation because that's how they do what they do, and no one's going to recommend going to your, like, comic creators will recommend going to other people's tables. They won't recommend you if they know you're going to be an asshole and do the hard sell, basically.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the thing that you're selling will be good enough in its own merits where you don't need to resort to sneaky psychological tactics.
Yeah. The other thing is, once you get a good pitch down, memorize it, and you should be able to rattle it off at the drop of a hat.
As long as it doesn't sound rehearsed.
So, my friend Steve, who writes, Steve Penfield, who draws Moon, has his pitch down so well that he literally says it word for word the same way every time. He's thinking about making it into a t-shirt.
Yeah.
And it's literally like, everyone who knows him can basically do it. Have you ever wondered what the moon does when it's not hanging in the sky? Well, and he like rattles it off. It's like, anyway, it's a really good comic if you do want to check it out. Moon.
I've seen it at conventions and stuff. It's cool. It's a cool thing.
Yeah, it is a cool comic. Anyway, but the thing is, it's like, he rattles it off, and it's like, he's a big like showman-y guy, and he draws a lot of people to the table, and he does sell well. And I think he's one of the ones who has a really good balance between, he will sort of try to get the comic in your hand, but if you just say no, like, he accepts that. And
he won't run after you, like, saying, no, come on, come back, buy this.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, I did forget one other thing for the press people. I just want to go back to this because it came up, because actually this happened to me while I was at Steve's table at Bright and Ice this year.
Okay.
Basically, if you're press and you're talking to someone about promoting their book or anything like that, stand to the side of the table. Don't block the view of the comics. And if anyone else who might actually purchase a comic comes over, stop, like, don't try to take over the conversation. Like, let that conversation happen. Like, basically, don't stop the comic creators from getting a sale just because you're basically pitching your company, which is what I do.
Yeah.
I pitch, like, we give free promotion and free reviews and that sort of thing to comic creators. And the last thing I want to do is stop them from getting a sale because I'm trying to promote their comic.
Exactly. Just, there's a punter conversation and a press conversation. Don't confuse one for the other.
Yeah. So that's basically all of my Comic-Con advice. Scott, I don't know if you have anything else.
In terms of advice, I think I pretty much said everything. Just, again, just have fun, be respectful, follow the rules, don't be a dick, and buy stuff you like.
I think that's a really good way of summing up exactly what you should do at a Comic-Con.
And just in life in general, don't be an asshole. Unless you're me, and then you're given free reign! Fuck the Princess Bride!
We're gonna have words, but anyway,
Yeah. So, thank you very much, David, for joining me today. Thank you very much for talking about all the great tips for going to cons.
Absolutely, Scott. As you know, I always love coming on the show.
And we love having you. Also, thank you to Dan Harris for our logo, that lovely microphone with the red and blue 3D glasses. My glasses, that's from him. Thank you very much. And you can listen to the show on iTunes, Podbean, YouTube. We're on YouTube now. Or at A Place to Hang Your Cape. if you do go on iTunes, please leave us a review. We want to get your feedback. We want to know what you think, even if it's negative. If it is negative, I'll be fine with it. No, really, I'll be fine. Also, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, blah, 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 at AP2HYC, using the hashtag PodCapers. We're on the Weeby Geeks and Tangent Bound Network. Check us out there. And as David said, we have a Patreon. Go on there to Patreon.com/AP2HYC. Check out the lovely rewards we have on offer. So, thank you for joining us, Capers. This has been PodCapers, the official podcast of A Place to Hang Your Cape. Cue the music!